Gamchi Lakwan. I'm Mark Harris. Welcome to DiversiTV, the weekly interview show broadcast on Lane TV, where we talk about issues under the general rubric of diversity from varied points of view. If you're new to DiversiTV, welcome. And Gamchi Lakwan is welcome. Greetings in Kalapuya, since we're in Kalapuya land, traditionally here on Turtle Island, which you know as North, Central, and South America, after those fabled Italian sailors who came here and discovered it for some reason, whatever. If you're part of our growing legion of fans, welcome back. DiversiTV's mission, and we do choose to accept it, is to, let's see if we can get the computer to work here. Yes. Our mission, and we choose to accept it, is to illuminate everyday diversity issues and give the mic and the camera to those who don't always get it. Our seasons roughly correspond to LCC terms. We've been doing this for 11 seasons, and this season we've already heard from Native American flute artist Juan Carlos Valle and Shane Martin from the United Coalition of Color, County Commissioner Peter Sorensen on diversity issues within government, Chaplain Al Gaines with the Lane County Youth Services Detention, who's the chaplain there, and this week we have Katherine Ali, who's an art faculty at Lane Community College. Recently at the college, we've been dealing with issues of diversity as they show up in the art world, and one of the things we've looked at is the question of what art's purpose is in an educational institution. So it has been said, for example, the purpose of art is to disturb you, and since I do have an artistic license myself, I have used that capability myself too. If an artist's job is to disturb us with their work, does the artist also have a responsibility also to educate us? Certainly within an educational institution, we feel that this is so. So many think it's so. So the following images may really disturb you, but it's not usually the work that I usually use to disturb people. So who decides what and when it is disturbing is up to you. So I'm just warning you, this is not lynching photography, but we are going to, talk about some controversial art. So first, Andres Serrano's Piss Christ, this is often associated with Robert Mapplethorpe, but it's Serrano that did it, and basically he was disturbed about his perception and the reality that modern Christianity was essentially urinating on the actual work and mission of Christ. And so to illustrate that, he took a crucifix and dipped it in his own urine, and this generated a lot of controversy because he was basically saying, look, I'm not anti-Christian, I'm just saying that essentially what you're doing is like you're urinating on Christ's work. And so
absolutely. Well, and also the key with this one is that he communicated the fact that it was piss, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that was something that was important for you to understand for this piece.
Right.
And that's one of those things as an artist, choosing what to tell the viewer and what not to.
Right.
Very important.
Yeah. So this is Katherine Ali. Thanks for jumping.
Sorry. Couldn't help myself.
Hey, it's all right. Let's look at the next slide. So this is an Aunt Jemima ad from the 1940s. Happy fine Aunt Jemima pancakes. Show sets folks singing. All right. Now, Aunt Jemima, corporate logo, the syrup brand, Quaker Oats, et cetera, et cetera. This is the 1940s. The mammy figure, classically. So this is from slavery days where she's wearing, a scarf. She's wearing the checkered dress, et cetera, et cetera. There's your, bacon and your pancakes with butter and the syrup ready to pour, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So this is from Gawker.com. So if you go to the Our History section of the Aunt Jemima website, gives a rather whitewashed rundown of key moments in the company's long life, founded in 1889. And 100 years later, the image of Aunt Jemima was updated by removing her headband and giving her pearl earrings and a face collar. But what about the image of Aunt Jemima, say, 6 or 7 decades ago? She still stand for warmth, nourishment, and trust? Well, kind of, but was more of a nourishment and trust of racism. Embrace your past, Quaker Oat Company. We dug through the ads from the 1940s, and it's true what they say. Happifying Aunt Jemima pancake show sets folks singing about racism. So political commentary, but, you know, talking about this was fairly common image.
Absolutely.
Right, and was considered innocuous in its time. So they pointed out that today's Aunt Jemima has been cleaned up. So gone is the headscarf. She's got pearl earrings. She's got, you know, pearls around her neck, et cetera, et cetera. This is usually only all you see of her. So Aunt Jemima. Now, she wasn't anybody's actual aunt. That was simply a generic term used from slavery days to refer to women of a certain age. Now, Uncle Ben, same thing. Servant to CEO. Uncle Ben was an African-American Texas rice farmer known far and wide for production of high-quality premium rice. So right there and then, they christened their product. You know, these are two white men having lunch in Chicago. They've had a corporate merger from the rice company that produced rice to serve our soldiers in World War II, converted rice brand, and then Uncle Ben's. And apparently, Uncle Ben was not related to either one of them. He was a farmer. So you would not necessarily get that because the usual logo is him. That's not a farmer's garb. That's a butler's garb or a servant's garb. So his image has been, still the racist context, but his image now is you can take a virtual tour of his office like he's a CEO, and he can, you know, as it talks about, New York Times, for example, has an article on the rebranding of Uncle Ben, the black stereotype mascot of the eponymous rice. He first appeared in ads in '46, being reborn as Ben, an accomplished businessman with an opulent office, a busy schedule, an extensive travel itinerary, and a penchant for sharing what the company calls his grains of wisdom about rice and life. A crucial aspect of his biography remains the same, though. He has no last name, which was the practice in slavery. You were a boy even until advanced age, and even if you were 60. And then after that, you were referred to as uncle or aunt, regardless of your relationship. And of course, the people calling you that weren't any blood relation to you. So moving on to that, in terms of this is DiversiTV. So we had an artist displaying work. Now she's displayed this work internationally. She does workshops. And this isn't really about her, but just the phenomenon of the art world, because the campus had been talking about this as an issue. So I had just Googled, you know, as I Googled our guest tonight, Kate, you know, and this work came up in Google. So clearly other people have looked at this. So this piece is a quilt. It's called Work. So if you notice the Aunt Jemima figure, the black duck wearing this scarf, identical dress, etc. Now, there's nothing wrong with using the images, and that's not what the issue is. You know, once it's in popular culture, it becomes a subject for commentary for art. But the legal precedent, of course, is that if you don't give a context for the art, it's assumed to go with whatever the historical image has been used for. If you use it without explanation. That's a closer view. So, you know, these are quilts. And so this particular artist works in fiber art and uses those images. And so that wasn't really what was hanging or what caused the controversy earlier on. But I found it interesting because in the communication that I had with her, because normally we would try and get her on the show, but she hasn't responded to emails. So campus has been talking about her, and this is on the web. So hey, you published it, so it's subject for DiversiTV. So Pickaninny frieze. Now pickaninny comes from the Portuguese slaver term generically applied to African slaves, pequeño niños, little children, regardless of their age. And so you have, you know, the coal black skin, the bright eyes, the big red lips. Sometimes that bow is a bone. And then the association with watermelon, which, okay, I teach an African American class, so Africans actually invented, first cultivated watermelon 8,000 years ago, as well as the bird that eventually became the chicken. So yes, we introduced those to the world, so I guess it's fair, to use that. But, that's not the context you get from Pickaninny Freeze here. So this is not for grown-ups, I believe the piece is called, where she uses the Pickaninny image with a cauldron now and the demon figure. And this isn't the piece that actually was hanging in the art exhibit in the Center for Meeting and Learning. It was basically the culinary program. It was a piece called Eat. So as an example, so if you're going to use Pickaninny image, so Spike Lee used this to great effect in his satiric movie Bamboozled, and he explained, very well what, blackface was about and what the images were about, and the Pickaninny doll, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I'm using the Pickaninny doll is because of the artist's explanation of the next piece, which is referred. So this generated controversy because it basically, precisely because of the Pickaninny image, and I don't know if you can zoom in on her left shoulder. There's a slice of watermelon there, as well as the cauldron and the demon. So in cartoons growing up, basically we had seen this image where, the grass-skirted bone in the head or bone through the nose cannibal savage is stirring a pot with the English explorer in it. So, all right, we can deal with that. So yeah, we grew up with that. So the artist, but it's a racist image, and that's the history with it. And so her explanation was that she had received a doll like this as a child, and she called it a Huggy, and they were handing this out in gas stations for wherever she grew up. Which, all right. Like I saw this in cartoons, but they weren't handing these dolls out in Los Angeles, so I don't know where she grew up. But okay, fair enough. Piece is called Eat, and it's, I look at it and my filters basically say, this, if you mean that you consume racism as part of your daily diet in America, then I feel you, sister, but you need to say that, because otherwise other people seeing this, we got a lot of students that were really upset by this image. And so without a context statement, which actually since we're a federal institution, we have to basically ask that and require that, and apparently that didn't get done because that's not how art was usually curated. So our guest tonight, Katherine Ali, sculptor, Lane Community College faculty. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So this is one of your works. What do you call that piece?
This is Ear to the Wall.
Ear to the Wall. Okay. And tell me about it.
Okay. This was a piece actually that was inspired. It came out pretty close to a point at which we were at war, which we still are. Same war.
Same war.
My last name is Ali. I have Pakistani heritage, and so for me, this war has become very personal in the fact that when I travel, I have to tack on at least another hour onto that travel experience, because I'm often run through a variety of checkpoints beyond just the normal check. There was a lot of talk about phones being tapped and the ability to tap your phone just in case you were a terrorist. And there was just a general sense of paranoia that was sort of everywhere I went. Wow. So this seemed like a good opportunity for me to sort of play off of that. Mm-hmm. And I certainly with my own experience in race and race relations, I've found that having a sense of humor is paramount.
Invaluable.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is sort of my way of trying to approach it with sort of a light heart, but still a reminder that it's everywhere, right?
And it's serious.
Absolutely,
right.
Very serious. So this is a piece where I basically modeled an ear, life-size ear, took a cast of it, and then created multiples. And at the time, I was living in the Bay Area, and I posted it every place I could think of and painted it to match to its environment. So here you can see.
Go back to that shot again.
You can see on the left-hand side, I have it on the Neely newspaper there, the Examiner, which was a perfect day to do it because it was during a protesters' march on Market Street. That was a rally for Hispanics and Latinos, which was really an interesting timing. Then I have it.
That's for the immigration issue.
Yes,
huh? Yeah.
yes.
Right.
Then I have a one on a light post just down in the middle of the city, and then one in a more intimate environment, which was inside of a public bathroom.
Yeah, so the light post is right there next to it. It's kind of like a dark in the middle, right? And then on the panel on screen right is in the bathroom.
Yes, yes. So
disabled access bathroom.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Very politically correct and conscious.
Thank you very much. I do my best.
It's a very good use of the diversity rubric.
Exactly. So it was basically, this is how I would show it, right? So I would
this
paint
is a close-up shot of the bathroom.
This is actually a close-up in the gallery.
Okay.
So I would have this on the gallery, painted to match the gallery, and then underneath it in a stack would be pictures, basically, of all the places that I put it around the city.
Okay.
So it became a sort of interactive piece, which is something that I really like to do with my viewers to help them sort of own the artwork and actually pick it up and handle it, which my father is a potter, and I found I could always sell his work if I could get someone to actually pick it up. So get that human connection. So anyway, this was an opportunity for me to basically discuss that sense of paranoia and that sense that people are listening, and there's always this sort of big brother over your shoulder.
Right, because that's definitely a reality.
Absolutely.
Definitely a reality for even those of us who are of terrorist descent.
Yes.
Actual terrorist descent.
Yes.
I mean, my mom was on the terrorist watch list, and she was like 75 at the time. Like, my mom?
It's amazing.
Why not me? That's an insult.
Right, exactly. Take a look at this.
My FBI file's bigger than yours.
Right. The reasoning behind that period of time was completely out of whack and made absolutely no sense. So it seemed like a good opportunity to go with something slightly bizarre.
Yes, indeed. So I remember the next piece is there was a line about the two views of heaven and hell. And in hell, basically, the folks, are suffering. They're at a table full of food, and they have these long paddles, implements on their hands, and they can't reach the food because it's right in front of them, and they can't bend over, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's heaven, which is the exact same scene, except that they're feeding each other.
Exactly.
And everybody's laughing.
Exactly.
Take a shot of that, if you would. So this piece is called?
Dining Dynamics.
Dining Dynamics. And in the on the website that I found this, can you describe what's going on here?
Sure. I basically constructed this table and drilled holes into each place setting, and then also drilled holes into the end of each fork. Then I took an airline cable, attached it to the fork, and then would fish it underneath the table and pop it up sort of randomly with no particular order, so that you were paired with someone else at the table. The trick to this piece was that there was only enough give to that line for one of you to get the fork to your mouth at a time. So this was a piece, yes, absolutely. That was a part of my inspiration there. Another part of the inspiration for this piece, because I like that concept, but I really wanted to talk more about a community. Because I had been to a discussion on, basically a panel discussion on religion, on contemporary religion, on the fact that we're all aware of each other now, that we're not in different separate corners of a planet that we don't know the others exist, right? So it's harder to demonize one another. So how do we deal with that? How do we interact with one another?
We are at the same table.
Exactly,
really.
Exactly. And for myself, I don't particularly belong to one religion because I don't believe in the sort of exclusions that happen there. But I do believe in getting people together, supporting one another, creating a community. And one of the things that we talked about during that panel discussion was the idea of breaking bread together. And that is something, a commonality amongst everyone. And it's a place where you go to feel comfortable, a place to sit down and really have a heart-to-heart with someone. And so this seemed like a fantastic opportunity for me to create that situation. And to create it in a gallery setting was even more fun for me because, when you're in a gallery and when you're dealing with critics and you're dealing with the public, there's a certain formality that happens there. And so this was an opportunity for me to sort of break that down.
Where was this? Bay Area?
Well, this one was actually in a gallery at 821.
Okay.
And so this is a really fun piece for me. And I was able to recreate it here again in Portland at the Art Summit in 2008. And there were 3 tables. And that was really interesting for me to see because there was a table of artists, a table of administrators, and then a table of the public.
Gallery administrators?
No, the art administrators of all types.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So the Art Summit is basically, sort of everyone coming together to discuss the state of art in Oregon currently, right, through the Oregon Arts Commission sort of lens. And so it was really fun for me to see the different ways in which, the artists, everyone's just coming up with new ways to eat their food, basically, right? The administrators, it was like a well-oiled machine. I mean, it was, they all had their timing when they were eating. And then the general public was an opportunity for people just to sort of giggle. There's a lot of laughing and tugging and pulling. And, the point of this piece is basically in order for everyone to successfully eat their meal, they have to first figure out who they're connected to, right? And that usually lasts about 3 or 4 minutes of everyone doing the same motion and frantically trying to figure out where they belong and who they belong to. And then after that, it's their choice whether they cooperate with that partner or whether they duke it out and then no one eats, right? So that was sort of the basis.
So what is the dynamic? Do they duke it out or do they cooperate?
I have found.
Do they play nice?
I have found that they always end up playing nice. There may be a little playful tug. That's not true, actually. This one, there was 2 guys at this table that they spent the majority of the time pulling at one another, but I knew who those 2 people would be. This is unique in that I got to set the table as to who was going to be eating. And I sort of knew that I could set that dynamic up. But generally, when the public have just been involved, they go ahead and cooperate with one another. And it's good food, so that's important.
I can't resist this. So the 2 guys get into a pissing match over the food.
Yes, absolutely.
So, so where are you from?
I am from Eugene, Oregon. I was born in Cottage Grove, but I was raised in Eugene.
What are your bloodlines?
How much time do you have? Let's see.
There's a reason I phrased it that way.
Sure. There's Scottish. There's Irish. There is Cherokee somewhere deep in there. And then on the other side, there is Pakistani, there's Mexican, there's Icelandic. And we think Swedish, though she was adopted, so we're not sure.
Okay. All right. So so with all that pedigree, you get, I guess it's your last name. And you could pass the paper bag test.
Right.
Depending on the paper bag.
Depending, yes.
Depending on the paper bag.
Right.
So, okay. So, Cottage Grove. So did you ever have any flack growing up? What was it like growing up?
Well, you know, it was an interesting place to grow up. I lucked out in the fact that my father was a potter, and he's very good at making friends. And so he was able to sort of tuck into the artist community in Eugene, where there's a lot more sort of open-minded, free-thinking people. Right. And so that was luckily the community that I was mostly raised in. I went to school at Magnet Arts. So, you know, it was a pretty safe place to grow up, I have to say. However, at that same time, you know, we would like to go on trips around. On Sundays, we do the family drive, and we'd stop at a Greasy Spoon for breakfast. And, you know, my father has beautiful brown, dark skin. My mom is lily white, just absolutely white. And, you know, I'm somewhere in between. And so we were at more than one restaurant where we would have to leave because we were being ignored. And I'm really thankful. I have a 5-month-old now, and so, I think about this even more now. But I'm really thankful that my father handled it the way that he did, which was not to treat me like I didn't understand what was happening. Yeah. You recognize that tension between...
And you pick it up as a little kid.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And he would very directly look at me in the eye and say, we're leaving because we're not welcome here, because of the color of my skin and because of the color of your skin, and probably because we're with the color of your mother's skin. So don't make this mistake when you grow up.
Wow.
And I've done everything in my power to not make that mistake of judging people on the color of their skin.
Okay, so a lesson at the very earliest is basically you refer to it directly and you deal with it directly.
Absolutely.
In a calm, collected manner.
Absolutely.
So you would just leave without necessarily, quote unquote, making a scene.
Right.
But, you know, the statement had been made.
Right, right. Well,
by them and by you as
absolutely.
well.
And my dad was fully capable of making a scene if he wanted to. I mean, he's a 6'2", very large man.
Yes.
And he had his moments where he would choose to make a scene, but not generally when I was there. I think he wanted to set a good example.
Well,
of
when
what
he
needed to
did,
happen.
when did he?
Let's see.
Did you notice that as being strategic? That's the question.
Sure. No, I think when he was outraged was when I wasn't around to experience that rage, and usually it was when you know, he was not taken seriously. And when you're out in public and you just want a bite to eat, it's one thing.
Yeah.
But
my money's still as green as anybody else's.
Right. But when it comes to not being taken seriously by the fact that you're darker, I think that's when he would, you know, sort of step up his level of irritation. Yeah. And I think the only time I ever saw him visibly upset in front of me was during the Gulf War, and I was in middle school. We were flying to Los Angeles to see some family.
From here?
From here. And there was actually, oh no, maybe it was Portland. It was Portland. And there was a military officer of some type who very briskly stepped between my mother and I and my father. And told him that he needed to talk to him separately. My father's a Vietnam vet, and I think for him to have that sort of thrown in his face, to be questioning his patriotism and question what he was doing there with his family, really sort of set him over the edge. And I could see that he was trying so hard to keep himself calm and
because of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happened?
Well, they took him aside, and I'm sure they asked him all sorts of questions, and my mom sat there and, you know, tried to just keep me calm and explain that this is something that's happening outside of our control, and that we have to just remain calm and stay focused on the fact that we're going to see people that we love, and this is what we need to do. So.
Okay. So, how does that get into your art?
Well, for me...
I mean, that's a foundational experience.
Oh, absolutely.
You witnessed, you know, with the eating thing, all right? So you know, this comes up in class, so we talk about isms.
Sure.
Right? In my work study in the office, okay, so what's this about isms? I'm trying to understand that. So, young, blanca, Latina, right? And said, all right, so there's categories of isms, you know, along the lines of perceivable differences. So if it's race, so the lexicon is basically, this is a microaggression. It's a microaggression because they didn't call you a name, but it's like, for example, Clinton's Secret Service detail at Denny's, right? So white agents, black agents sitting at the same Denny's in adjoining sections served by the same waitress. The white agents get menus and water, et cetera, get served, get their orders taken. The black Secret Service agents sitting right next to them in the same section by the same waitress get ignored. They're in business suits. It's the Secret Service, right? In D.C.
Right.
So, all right, this leads to a lawsuit, and you know, some of my diversity training friends got that work with, you know, Denny's and Texaco, you know, with all the colored jelly beans get up on the bottom of the bag. That's why they don't get promoted, et cetera, right?
Right.
So microaggressions is a term coined, among others, black Navy psychiatrist Chester Pierce. And so he says, this is the most common because people aren't going to call you nigger, for example, or sand nigger, or all the other kind of things. Sorry for you disturbing you, studio audience, but this is DiversiTV, and we chop that up like that, because that is what is said. I mean, that's been said to you and I, right? In this town, you know, in our workplaces and as well in our school environment. So that's what happens, right? And so one of the things that Chet Pierce talked about, and also Daryl Wing Su in his paper, Racial Microaggressions in Everyday Life, where he basically says it's not just, you know, being ignored, it's also, there's like 9 different things, you know? All right, your father's a Vietnam vet. What? Wait a minute. I fought for my country and you're pulling this kind of caca?
Sure, which has happened throughout this country's history.
Right, lots of times. So, when you deal with discrimination as a subject in your art, because you're dealing with it indirectly in the pieces that we saw, I mean, the references are there. How do you articulate that? What kind of, for example, when I was looking at the other artist's training, okay, so she's exhibited all over the world. She's, you know, got trained, she's got degrees, etc. I know you have to have degrees to teach at Lane. Is this part of your training?
As far as how you express your content, or? Yeah,
your content.
Well, it depends on the school. I mean, for me, growing up in Eugene, I mean, no disrespect to Eugene, but, you know, other than within the sort of university and school context, we're very much either a craft-based culture when it comes to our art, or a much more sort of vacation art, right? It's something that you look at to enjoy and escape in, right? It's
so
for
that's
the working man.
You've used two terms, like if we were talking jazz and we were talking music, I know what you mean by, you know, craft. That means technique, that means your instrument, that means, you know, so what does it mean in the art world, craft?
The craft in the art world, which, I mean, that could be a whole nother show, but the craft meaning the way in which you make it, that you have good craftsmanship, that you take the time to make sure that it's a well-made object, that this table is well crafted, right? That's what I'm referring to there.
Yeah, right. Because definitely, you know, because, you know, the artist was talking about, okay, you know, she's very good at the craft of transferring images to quilt, and that she does workshops on that, and okay,
absolutely,
great, absolutely, yeah, beautiful piece. Yeah, I'd buy a piece. I'd buy eat. You know, except that, you know, for that price range, it's no. I'd pay a guitar price for that. You know, but you know, a quilt. You know, my grandma's quilt. That's, you know, that has more meaning. You know, but you know, craft. So
Sure.
And then, so the other piece, the other side.
Then the vacation art term.
Vacation art,
which is basically referring to something that was articulated about Picasso and Matisse, where Matisse chose to create work that was for the working man, so that when he came home, he could put his hat down, sit down in his chair, and gaze at this beautiful image. Right? It's something to escape into, basically. And it's
from your workaday cares.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I get that. I mean, growing up in Eugene, that was originally why I wanted to make art, was to make beautiful things, and to beautify my surroundings, right?
Okay.
And I was very inspired by beauty.
Yeah.
And
Beauty's
then
inspiring.
absolutely,
So, yeah.
absolutely. But then, I found a craving to do more. The more I started making my own artwork, I grew up in my dad's studio, starting with just little hand-built things, and throughout my life worked in.
Does he use a wheel?
He works as a wheel, but I always worked hand building and doing small figuring. I mean, selling unicorns at the Saturday market when I was 5. Luckily, I've moved on from there. But so as my craft matured, I found that I wanted to go beyond just that surface quality, right? And so that's why I sought schools in the places that I did. I went to Vancouver, BC, and worked with some really amazing artists there, but found it to be very stuffy, and that the audience that they wanted you to work towards was the critic and the well-educated artist, which is fine. But
that's a money thing. That's a class thing. Then.
Absolutely.
And then there's a hidden subtext in there as well as how many of those of color. Because I mean, BC is a very cosmopolitan place.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But who is your audience there in that context?
And I found just in the community there, when they found out that I was going to the Emily Carr Art Institute, they immediately assumed that I was a snob, which was really surprising for me, growing up, in a very sort of hippie culture. I didn't even know how to take that,
Right.
and the fact that it was important to me that my audience was everyone. I wanted to reach a large population. And so California College of the Arts and Crafts down in Oakland, California, is where I ended up and totally flourished there. Linda Fleming was sort of my mentor, and she really taught me to sort of dig deep and look at my own experiences as sort of a starting point for what I choose to make, versus wanting to make something pretty and having that be the basis, really thinking about what my interests were and what my experiences were, and using that as a starting point for why I wanted to make work. And so I don't think concept is in every school. I think it's something that happens more and more in most schools these days, but I would say 20 years ago, not so much, right? So I think it's something that's sort of being demanded at this point, but it hasn't always been that way.
Well, yeah, because when I think of like Basquiat, all right, and so being the darling of the art world in the city, and coming from the background that he came from, and who is art being made for, and how do we deal with those class distinctions?
Sure, yeah.
Class and race distinctions, right? Those 3 degrees of separation or more, however more there are.
Right. So when you ask me about how race informs and how my experiences inform my work, for me, I think because I am a woman of many ethnicities, and that I was raised to sort of lead myself with my humanity versus one particular race, or I'd be going in 6 different directions.
Which could look interesting in play.
Right. It's important to me that while I'm speaking of my own experiences, all of these come from my own inspiration, my own, sort of digging into my own, mining my own experiences, right? I want them to be readable to the public, to everyone, so that they can look at it and have a dialogue with it, right? And I think that that's where art is interesting, is that you have your own ideas of what you're going for, but at a certain point you have to let it go and let the public have their own interactions with that piece. Right. And that's a scary place to be as an artist.
Why?
Well, it's scary because you have your own lenses, right? Mm-hmm. You have your own ways of looking at your work, and no matter how hard you try, it's one of the biggest losses coming out of art school, right? Is you lose your peers. You lose all those people who say, "What are you thinking? You know, don't you see this X, Y, and Z?" And you didn't even notice it. You know, and
so that immediate feedback, that's safe.
Yes. Yes. So when you put out something, when you work from a very personal space and you put it out there in the public, I mean, you know, it has this sort of sense of sort of being out there naked. I mean, you don't know how people are going to perceive that. And so it's an exciting moment, but it also can be a little intimidating, which is why you have to be really clear with yourself as to what you're saying, why you're saying it, and the ways in which other people and their lenses will perceive it.
Should you be able to defend it?
Well, I think as a professional artist, yes.
Okay.
I think it's one of those things.
Think not less of me in my ignorance. A professional artist means you're getting paid and earning a living.
Right. As someone who spends their career.
Right. And you're doing this. This is not just a hobby. You're showing work. You're charging money, et cetera, et cetera. So you should be able to defend it.
Right. It's public. It's something you're putting out in the public, and your name is attached.
Yes.
So because of that, you have to be willing to talk about your. Well, okay. Let me back up there. You don't have to be willing. There's all kinds of career artists that choose not to ever address the fact of what they're talking about. Christo, right? He's the guy who loves to do the big draped pieces on,
I participated in the running fence in Sonoma County.
Right.
So,
He refuses to talk about what it means to do the drapes that he does. Right. And that's just part of his practice. Right. So, when it comes to art, I mean, you just can't say what you should and shouldn't do. It's completely dependent on that particular artist. Yeah. But from my point of view, as an artist, sorry, I keep touching my microphone. I'm used to doing that.
It's your heart.
It's right. From my point of view, I certainly want to be able to defend my art and to have a discussion. I mean, I think that's the thing. That's one of the reasons I make my art is I wanted to create a discussion out there in the world.
Yeah. And it becomes an interesting point then, especially when you're using images that are disturbing, and I guess when I put out, music or whatever, it's my baby, right? And okay, like it or not, I'm going to defend it or put it out there, but not everybody feels that way.
Right.
And I guess that's, part of the issue that happened with, for example, with these pieces is like, okay, just need an explanation because, and there's a legal precedent backed by the Supreme Court. We're a federal workplace. You can't just hang this here, and I don't want you to take it down. I just need you to give a context statement, even if it's just, hey, these are dolls that I got as a kid. Well, okay, you're a grown woman now. That was years and years ago. Put it in adult context because this is our workplace and people are freaking out about it, and I'm having to clean up this mess, which... I get them blamed as attacking, which, okay, whatever. But no, people have come to me in pain, and I got to deal with it. That's my job. I'm in student services. So I just kind of ask them politely, right?
Sure.
So, for example, you were talking about that Aunt Jemima piece that somebody else did using that same image. Well, tell us about that.
Yes, Betty Saar. I think it was in mid-1970s, I think. Okay. She did a piece with Aunt Jemima, and she did a whole series, basically. And I should say, in the beginning, she's African-American, Irish Native American.
Okay. That's a fighting combination.
Exactly. And, the artist themselves is part of the context, right?
Right.
So it's something to consider. But she did pieces basically where she would take sort of stereotypical black imagery from America and sort of reposition it with other found objects. So she had this little Aunt Jemima doll and an image of, I think it was a slave holding a white baby.
Mm-hmm.
And
the mammy, yeah,
mm-hmm,
right.
And then on one side you had Aunt Jemima holding a broom, and then the other she was holding a gun, right? And so it makes a very different statement,
yes,
right? I mean, there's a sense of empowerment there. Right. There's a sense of sort of ownership as to what that figure represented. And so context can often be sort of read into just by what else is in that piece.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the reasons I was so disappointed by the Eat piece, is I just heard about it through the newspaper. I didn't get a chance to go see it myself. And so when I heard about it, I was like, well, you know, I need to see this. I need this little 2x2 image. I can barely get anything from it. And then to hear, you know, that she didn't give a statement about it, or that, I mean, not that she necessarily had to come in and talk about it, though an artist talk would have been fantastic.
Right.
I was disappointed to hear that there wasn't a statement with the piece. I think that's one of, especially in an educational institution, that's all it would have taken. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think if she felt embarrassed by it, by the situation, or you know, was called on something that she didn't realize she was hurting other people, it could have been simple for her to say that.
Right. And that's part of what was kind of like incredulous for folks. That, wait, you've been working for 22 years,
right?
Right. So if you'd shown this in Northeast Portland, I mean, because I found your work on the same website her work was on, so I know y'all have crossed paths or whatever. So. All right, try and show this in the hood of Northeast Portland or Harlem. Right. And you think you'd get no reaction? Oh, you'd get a reaction, and you'd have to defend that work. I mean, previous guests on DiversiTV, because one of, you know, the son of one of our previous guests said, yeah, my mom does quilts. So, right, if she was going to do that, because we have thought about doing that kind of stuff, her stuff is a little bit more diffuse, but it is talking about the African American experience, then you have to contextualize it.
Well, and especially, I mean, I think it depends on where you're showing it, right? Yeah, there's some galleries that would choose to show it, and then the artist would never have to say a word about it. It would be the gallery's choice to, you know, basically take the complaints and whether they would tell them to the artist and where to go from there. But in the situation that it was shown, I think it really was a disappointment that there wasn't more written about it. And I heard that there was an artist statement floating out there somewhere, and I would still love to read that because I never saw it.
Okay. I'll forward it to you.
Yes, that would be fantastic.
It's public information. You know? Yeah, but it basically was, you know, it's the culinary program, and so usually you just have food stuff, you know, and sometimes, you know, okay, you know, one of the managers had joked, yeah, pornographic, you know, an eggplant, but, you know, carrot between two eggplants or something like that. It's
about as racy as
it gets.
Right.
Okay, fine.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, eat, right, that, you know, it was food stuff. And that was fine. And there was actually kind of like a Betty Crocker figure, you know, let them eat cake, and she took that down. I go, no, I don't want you to take the stuff down. Just, I mean, Betty Crocker, it's like, okay, you're making the same kind of social commentary. That's cool. Nobody needs to explain Betty Crocker, right? Let them eat cake, unless you want to do that whole thing with the misattributed to Marie Antoinette, but whatever. You know, just explain it, because otherwise I would love to be able to defend it. And I really did mean, yeah, I would buy it, because I've got, you know, colored only swimming pool stuff and Jolly Nigger Banks. I mean, on the African American community, we collect, you know, slave shackles, and to remind us. I mean, it's painful, but, you know, it's an art piece.
Absolutely, and it's part of our history.
Yeah. Let's see, where are we? So, What would you suggest for future artists? I mean, your daughter, right? She's growing up in Eugene,
Mm-hmm.
like you did,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's in the blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's doomed.
She's doomed.
As far as what
the artistic identity, have you done any pieces about, okay, you're a mom now?
Well, actually, I did just finish a piece that's up at PCC on the Sylvania campus, which unfortunately I haven't had a picture of yet because it was so fresh, basically immediately after being pregnant. But basically the image is abstract figure. It's made out of a green plywood, right? And I made sure and not have the breasts, not have the sexual organs. It's just the belly. It's just the space and place that we all pass through, right? And where the belly button is, it's called the lens show. So where the belly button is, there's a big optic lens. And then when you look into it, there's a mirror. So if you're across the room, you can see yourself reflected upside down.
Wow.
And it draws you in, and then you look at this interior space.
You
so
fan of Jimi Hendrix?
Yes.
Belly button window,
Absolutely.
room full of mirrors?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Exactly. But the point of that piece is we all pass through that, right?
Yes.
And I think if I had a word of advice for future artists, it would be honest with yourself and really do mine your experiences, but think about the way in which the rest of the public is going to interact with that. Doesn't necessarily mean you won't make a piece just because other people won't like it, but consider it.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah, I mean, because do you think it is an artist's place to enlighten the public?
I think it can be. I certainly try to take that on. It's a personal choice, just like any personality trait, right? All types of artists are out there. But
So, the adage about those who can't do teach doesn't apply to you. So
certainly hope not.
Well, clearly not. I mean, we've seen the work. So how do you teach that? How do you bring that out?
I think there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but one of my favorite activities that I do in the beginning is I have them do an interest map where they basically have to write down all of their interests, all the different things that are important to them, and then actually create a sort of visual representation of that so that they have to start examining who they are and what they're interested in and what they want to talk about in their own artwork.
Is there a general rule of thumb if you're going to use controversial images that have a history?
I don't think there is, unfortunately, a general rule. I think just like anything, as far as being aware of every aspect of that image that you're going to use in your work, just like I'm aware of, the materials I use. What does it mean to use a green plywood over a dirty painted plywood? Same thing with imagery, right?
Yeah.
I mean, are you working with something that's fresh and new and no one knows about, or are you working with something with a long history and past?
Yeah.
And you have to consider that because it's obviously going to impact the way in which people read your work.
Right. What about highfalutin concepts like skin privilege and class privilege and those kind of things that can they be in the grammar of your work? I've heard the term visual grammar, right? So,
absolutely. Is that something that will be in my work?
Yeah. I mean, it is in your work already.
Yeah, absolutely. I just tend to react to what's happening in my life currently, and it sort of comes to the surface. So we'll see what this year brings.
Certainly the recent election has been interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
I was reading a piece by Tim Wise. Basically, he said, so what if the Tea Party was black? Do you think that people showing up, armed on the Washington Mall, talking about if they don't like the election, they'll change it? Hey, if they were black people, how would that be received, or would they get a pass, or whatever? Just like, how could you, display something like that? Any final thoughts?
I don't. Mostly, just I think you have to understand as artists, it's a reflection. You know, it's something that comes out of you, or it comes out of individuals. So unfortunately, there really are no rules to the playing field. It's more a fact of who chooses to show them and who chooses to view them and purchase them.
Yeah. And that's what it kind of comes down to then. It's defined by the quote-unquote marketplace.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can produce art for your own consumption, and I know people do that. But then where do you go? If you're going to be a professional artist that is out in the public sphere, be able to defend your work and be aware of the impact of your work, especially on you in creating it.
Absolutely.
And be at least able to explain that. Well, I guess we'll have to leave it there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
If you like what you've seen, email us at liveclass@lanecc.edu, put DiversiTV in the subject area, and tell us what you liked about this show or any other show, and suggest future shows, because we're always interested in going out and getting more material. So until then, go well, stay well.